everybody, this is John here from Mostly Reptiles, and today we're going to be doing a 12-12 by 18 bioactive terrarium for a crested gecko. So today I'm doing a bioactive build for crested gecko, or this also can work for other new cow geckos such as gargoyles, leeches, and maybe even baby leeches and chihuahuas. But we have a 12-12-18 that I have used in the past. It's a used enclosure. So I'm going to set this one up for a crested gecko. So to start off, we are going to include a drainage layer. The drainage layers I use I vary. Sometimes I use horticultural charcoal. I use pumice stone, leca, or MVP. Some like these little rocks. And the drainage layer will be used to create a barrier for excess moisture. That's what we want when you're having tropical environments. You want there to be an extra layer to collect extra water so you don't get a buildup on your whole soil layer. Now you don't need, or I wouldn't recommend, a drainage layer for things such as arid enclosures, snakes, or any type of fossorial animal, just due to them probably going to dig down to that level, so you want to provide enough area for them to actually dig. But for this crested gecko new cows, we're going to provide them with a drainage layer. So what I'm going to do is we're going to dump it in there, and this is also used leca. I wash and clean everything. For this one, I'm not going to do a huge drainage layer just because honestly it doesn't need it. Mainly going to be a soil-based enclosure. I'm gonna kind of even it out, get there. So there's probably about an inch of a drainage layer. Now I use pumice stones, so little rocks, and MVP, which is going to be the main medium. And some people, you can decide what you want. Leca, the leca balls or the clay balls, they have more lighter weight. This, I like it because you can know when it dries up and when it kind of fills out. And also when you have a tight area of such as like a drainage layer, you don't need a, you don't need a barrier like a screen mesh, just because the screen mesh is going to separate the soil and the drainage layer. But when you have a tight niche drainage layer, the soil can't go through the little specks of where it would go if it was like leca or more of like a pumice stone material that we have up here. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with our substrate. So this substrate was in a previous enclosure. I'm remaking this for another gecko, and I also added about half of the previous enclosure substrate and then half new substrate. This is something that we made. So in these substrate, I've already added leaf litter, any type of calcium blocks, and just other biodegradables that have already came in with it, such as might be a little bit of dead root inside of, there you go, some dead root and sticks. Now the crested gecko's enclosure, they need it to be more of a tropical environment that provides humidity but also doesn't hold water, doesn't saturate it. So this right here is going to be a nice, airy, fluffy substrate that's going to be good for the plants and the geckos, especially if you're doing gecko breeding. You want something they can kind of dig through, and also that can provide a wet spot in the substrate. So since it's, again, I don't need a barrier, no screen mesh, I'm just going to kind of drop this in there. Or you know what, better yet, I'm going to get that cup I had. Where did that cup go? Oh, there it is. I'm going to get this cup right here, and I'm going to just dig it out. Just because I don't want to have to worry about all the dumping. Now you can add a barrier mesh, it's optional if you have like a tight niche area piece of like drainage layer, but just for this case, I'm not going to do it. I do it sometimes I don't. Kind of just depends on my attitude and feeling for the day on it. But we're gonna, And you want to provide a nice layer of substrate too. So usually I'll go for a few inches up in the front, and then I really try to slope it up to the back, because that's where your taller plants or just more rooted in plants are going to be at. And that creates a little little depth within the enclosure. So yeah, I'm going to kind of smooth it out like that. And this might have been just the perfect amount of substrate. I am sweating like an animal right now. Okay, so we're going to dump this in here. Yeah, now you can go to a lot of different suppliers for your substrates. We make ours, but that's just optional for kind of how you want to do it. The Biodude has amazing substrates. Zoomed, a lot of different places. You can buy Bioactive soil, or you can just buy regular soil. You can mix and match your own things. Kind of depends on how you want to do it, but that's where it is. We have probably about 2-3 inches of substrate in the front, and then it slopes into the back for our higher rooting plants. Now we have our soil and our drainage layer. I added the plant light, just so we can start seeing how it's visually going to look. So the next thing I like to do is, before I move on to anything, I give it a good mist. This will get the soil into place and kind of get everything going. There we go. Okay. And then next, I go in with my hardscape first. So we have things such as manzanita branches, cork bark, things that the animal is going to use to climb on and kind of just travel throughout the enclosure. So you're going to come up with some problems like this one is too big for the enclosure. So again, you can always break the sticks, I save the stick pieces for another time. So I'm going to cut this down to size and then get it all worked into there. Okay, so now once you break it down, whether it's by machine or by force, now you start finding your placements. So for this one, I kind of want it to branch out over here almost. Kind of where it's like a creating a vine, adding area for the gecko to climb up. And let's see how we're gonna do this. I like that. Kind of creates a branch, enough area for the gecko to move around and climb, and also gives me areas where I can probably put in a plant that can crawl over. Next, I have cork. This cork is a cork tube. These are really good for the animals either hide in, or if you stuff moss within it, you can use it to grow like pothos or vining plants or even bromeliads on it. So from here, I think I want to go, okay, let's see how to do this. Okay, and then there's cork flats that you can use, and these things, this one doesn't break easy, but you can break it into pieces. Kind of depends on how you want to work it. So I want to see if maybe I can get this to go right here. Kind of give a hiding spot for the animal and more area for this whole thing to climb on. So it'll create a little dysfunction, not dysfunction, but little opportunities for the animal to climb and kind of just move around within the enclosure. That's something you do want to provide. If there's too much open space, these animals will feel very, just kind of scared of the area. They're in the wild, their task is to avoid predators, kind of stay out the way, and this is going to give them the chance to do that. So when you're doing your hardscapes, try to find just areas that you can kind of branch out, give them areas to climb, hide, and just use their naturalistic instincts. Okay, so after we set it up with our hardscape, then we go into our plants. I'm going to keep this one pretty simple. I'm only going to use type plants. I have this vining type plant. I don't really know what it is all the way. It's string of something. And then this other vining plant. I love using vine plants or things that kind of like flow out for crested gecko enclosures, as they just do so well with branching off and overall growth. I never have a real problem with things such as pothos, philodendron, or string of pearls, whatever. So I'm going to squeeze the side of this, kind of get it loose to go, and then we'll find the thing out. Okay, there we go. And now when you have this bundle, I like to break it up to allow the roots to go and kind of grow on their own. Some people don't want to do this, some people do. I'm going to use this in my rubbish bin right here. Again, it's all about perspective and what you think is best. And this plant, it's all sphagnum moss, so actually what what I am going to do, kind of like how I was saying you stuff it with sphagnum moss, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Filling this with sphagnum moss is going to, for one, if the gecko wants to go in it, it can provide as a humid hide area, but two, it can also give the plant opportunities to grow. So it kind of acts as a dual purpose for this terrarium. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to get some of this sphagnum moss that is surrounding the roots, I'm just gonna shove it into the overall container of this. Now we have this whole plant right here. There's multiple different vines coming off it. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to just kind of find the sphagnum moss and I'm going to just shove it in there. This plant will root in the sphagnum moss similar how they usually root in like soil, and it's going to help it grow, and that's basically just a replication. The roots are going to take over for the soil instead, or for the overall, sphagnum moss, and the sphagnum moss is going to act as a soil type of thing for it. And then now what I'll do is I'll branch all these off. This plant has multiple different like root systems. So even right here I have two separate plants. You can either save them or you can find other areas for this plant to go. For this, I'm just going to connect this whole plant into one. Kind of let it go from there. And I'm going to connect it to the vines. So around the enclosure, there's going to be kind of growing off. And this will, again, allow it to branch around, grow. These plants are going to root into almost anything that it can get its roots into. So now you don't need to have them going like this. Like, again, this is all just my opinion on how I want it. But for me, that's what I find the most appealing. I want it to kind of branch around, grow around things. Now, I might change my opinion here. Like, this extra one that I added, I'm just gonna take it out because honestly, it doesn't provide me any extra support with this plant. What I'm going to do is, again, leave it on the ground, kind of let it root around. But I might use this enclosure for another type of animal. I might use it for warning geckos or who knows. But for this modest build, this is going to be a Crested gecko enclosure, since they are the most kept and something that we breed. But yeah, this can definitely be used for a Crested gecko. Again, now some plants that you could use are pothos or philodendron, bromeliads, monsteras. This is kind of the plants I had, so I'm going to make the best of it and do what I have to do. So for this plant, I'm going to just throw it on the ground. It's going to be a ground support plant, and I'm going to hope it climbs up. Again, when you're trying to trail off plants, you can guide them in a way. You can use, again, the stakes. You can provide them with moss to grow up. You can kind of do a plethora of things. My favorite is to just guide using wherever it kind of wants to go. So if I want it to go up, I'm going to add a cork bark for it to go up. If I want it to stay floor level, that's what I'm going to do as well. But again, it kind of just depends on what you're wanting and how you formulate your plant. These plants, they grow at their own will, and you can progress the growth. You just gotta know too. So now, with all that kind of set in, I'm going to do this mist, and this mist is going to be pretty important to start off your enclosure, to be honest. I think so. A lot of people will kind of just set it up and call it a day. I do a heavy mist right now. These are tropical plants, so they're going to need tropical misting. Now the enclosure currently is a little more saturated than I would like, but that's good for the beginning part. You're causing trauma to the roots of the plants, and this is kind of helping it. They're meeting new soils, new textures, new biomes, so this is going to grow, and you're going to see different progresses throughout your time with the enclosure. Some woods, they grow mold. Some, there's going to be algae or lichen or moss, whatever it may be. But for this case, we're going to just kind of see how it happens. And now we're going to move on to the last step, which is going to be your botanicals and your isopods. So for botanicals and isopods and all the good stuff, for botanical wise, I use my favorite ones, which are going to be magnolia pods. These do amazing for me. Magnolia and lotus pods are the top two, I would say, for bioactive growth with isopods, and also for breeding isopods. They provide crammed areas for them to initiate breeding. Babies love to hide and kind of eat within it. And then I'm kind of running out of leaf litter, but I got pieces of magnolia leaves, and you can go use live oak. You can buy these from other pet shops. Now, I collect mine outside and then I sterilize it. But again, you can do a lot of different attributes. So for me, I like to crush mine up. That's just, some people like to get whole pieces. I like to crush mine up, and this provides more areas. For one, the gecko, if they're going on the bottom of the floor, they can use this as protection, hiding areas, but it can also, it's also going to serve a big purpose for your isopods. These guys are going to eat decaying matter, any type of leaves, fecal matter, all the goods that you don't really want in your enclosures they'll eat, and plus the leaves and the botanicals are going to be their gas. That's what you're going to need majority of, and that they're going to eat off that, and it's going to be their staple diet. Now you can supplement them with fish flakes, the isopods, if you want to, but when they're in a bioactive enclosure, it's going to be a little bit different of a challenge. It kind of depends on what you want to do. So now with the botanicals in, I'm going to move on to the isopods. So the last part is going to be adding the isopods. For part of them, I got some, you can't really see them all, but it's a bunch of, oh, one guy just dropped. It's a bunch of powder oranges, and then the next one we have a bunch of dwarf whites. So powder oranges, dwarf whites are my top two to go with. Now, if you're doing other builds, some people are afraid of dwarf whites because they can colonate other things. It kind of hit or miss of what you want to do, but I like dwarf whites. I think they do awesome in the enclosure. But yeah, they do amazing. They also cooperate with the powder oranges pretty well. So what I like to do is just dump them all in, and in my cultures, I already keep springtails and such. So it kind of just depends on how you want to do it. Yeah, dump them all in. With the dwarf whites, I kind of spread them around, get everybody going. But yeah, there you go, a bioactive build for a new cow, Crested Gecko, some of that sort. I think this is going to do pretty good for most juveniles. Now when they get adult size, of course, upgrade them to 12, 12, 18 could be pulled off, absolute minimum for an adult if you really want to, but bigger is better. We want to kind of provide more of a habitat for these guys rather than just keep them crammed in. But this build is going to probably grow out for about a month, and then I will see what I'm going to do with it, whether I sell it or keep it in the reptile room. I'll figure that part out. I'm not really sure. I do like how it came out. I love the contrast of the woods. All this stuff is things I have used before with other bioactive builds, and I've taken apart and kept. But this does really well with what we're trying to go for within a Crested Gecko build. Tropical, lush, and over time it's going to grow out and fill up the area. But if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. Definitely comment down below what you think. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let us know what's happening. Always down to take criticism. If you are watching from Oklahoma or Houston, we will be in Reptilian Nation on November 15th and 16th in Oklahoma, and then November 22nd, 23rd in Houston. So check us out. We're going to have a lot of cool stuff. But again, thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next time.